Ignore your team. And I know that's kind of a bold thing to start the video out with, just throwing that in your face. But hear me out. With light tanks, in my opinion, comes two sets of rules. One is the rules for actually playing the light tanks themselves. Rule number one for that list being outlive the enemy light tank at almost any means necessary. You cannot win the game in the first 10 seconds, so don't try to. If you outlive that guy, you're going to be able to influence the battle in ways that can be wildly significant just because the tank and equipment you have in the match itself. Because sure, you can't kill probably those heavy tanks over there, but those guys have no camo, and you're going to see them 400 meters before they see you. And you've got tank destroyers left, which have great guns, but not a lot else to talk about. Your existence is the sole reason this battle would be winnable. So that's rule number one for actually physically playing the tank. But there's another side of this that is all mental, because there's a lot of things you got to think about when you're playing a light tank. And a lot of people probably don't even consider most of them. I probably don't even consider some of them when I'm playing my light tanks, and I play a lot of light tanks. So rule number one for playing the light tanks themselves is to outlive the enemy light tank. You can't do anything else in that list if you don't do rule number one. Rule number one for the mental side of things, as I started the video with, is ignore your team. Which, in a broad sense, is kind of a dangerous thing to say, but hear me out. If you've ever been on my stream and I've been playing a light tank, there's about a 25% chance I've actually had to respond to someone in the in-game chat for saying someone is being useless in a light tank because they're still alive and they're not in a position that's actively seeing things. This, again, goes back to you can't win the game in the first 10 seconds. There's a difference between being useless and not doing something stupid, which a lot of people struggle to know, honestly, which is kind of disappointing, but that's besides the point. It's a very, very regular occurrence for someone to be told in their light tank, go spot this, go do that, go do this, go do that. And there's a fair amount of it that is valid. If it's shareable knowledge, like, hey, there's nobody over there, you can just drive down and kill Artie and run straight back, that's one thing. It's another thing entirely if someone tells you to, hey, go kill Artie, and there's 4 unspotted tank destroyers. A lot of people don't think about this stuff, especially tank destroyer mains. I would be a rich man if I had $1 for every time I have found a tank destroyer main who doesn't play almost any light tanks whatsoever. They're the most common people you'll see that will critique how a light tank is doing when they themselves do not understand it. This is where, you guessed it, you ignore your team. This is gonna sound like a pep talk that they give to 7th graders about, like, don't do drugs, kids. But it's true. If you don't feel good about going somewhere or doing something due to lack of info, or you're not sure what's probably gonna end up happening if you try it, then don't try it. Live to spot another day, and I mean, depending on the map, you could end up throwing it back in that guy's face. Again, you can't win the battle in the first 10 seconds. If you go off and die, the enemy light tank now has the whole battle to roam around on his own. And on some maps, that is literally the difference between winning and losing. This is why Prokhorovka has 10% of the battles end in draws, because those 10% of battles are often the games where either both light tanks die or neither light tanks die. The map is essentially waiting for one team's light tank to screw up and die, so that the other team's light tank has free reign to go straight down the bush line, find everybody, and end up on YouTube. The whole battle swings around these 2 tanks, or 8, depending on how much alcohol matchmaking had. This is an advantage you do not want to push your luck with. Like I said before, if you're the only light tank left in the match, on some maps, you control the match. Just you. Just you. You control the whole match. You can't do that if you're dead. And if you go off and do something that someone wanted just so they can get a shot of damage, you're probably gonna die. There is absolutely merit to doing nothing with a class like this, because sometimes doing nothing is better than doing something. If you're in a spot where you know enemies will probably show up at some point in the near future, or if you know it's a good area deterrent if they get spotted, then there's some decent value in sticking around in that position. Of course, a lot of teammates see a light tank not spotting anything and consider them just being useless. This is where there's the big difference between just spotting things and being a spotter. A spotter is someone who isn't actively trying to find people all the time, but they're also not trying to not find people at the same time. This is what's commonly referred to as passive spotting. You just kind of chill somewhere and people show up at some point. This is mixed in with a lot of relocating, which again, intuition from doing this a lot. No, what people want you to do is aggressive scouting, because they saw an EBR do it on YouTube and they think you can do the exact same thing. This is the part where you ignore your team. This part right there. It is insanely easy to detect things. I mean, it is incredibly easy to find where the enemy is. You see people do it all the time, and you probably haven't really thought about it. This is what some people think playing a light tank is like. And this is the kind of thing that ends up happening, and these people kind of think that way because people keep telling them to do stuff like this. This is the kind of stuff that loses games. And it's the kind of stuff that I made this video about. Because I'm telling you right now, don't do stuff like this. Now, obviously, if you're in a platoon, that's one thing. You can communicate a lot more effectively in a platoon than you can with just some random teammates.
I spotted him.
Spot the E4?
Yep, I did. I was looking away and I just see like 2K E4. Okay, well there goes the EVR.
Hello there.
I'm at 3K spotting. There's another E4, but he's over there.
Shabooey.
Oh boy.
And there also is a case to be made about a teammate saying, hey, I'll help you with the in-game quick chat on, I call it the Z wheel, but if you hold Z over a teammate, it's that thing. If someone pings a position where they get shot from, there's a lot of like hidden teamwork stuff like that. That's not what I'm talking about. You can use that to your advantage. The stuff I'm talking about is the guy in a max rank Scorpion G badge sitting in the most obvious sniping position on the map, 600 meters away from the nearest enemy, spamming you to go find him. That's the kind of guy I'm talking about. Now, when I word it like that, obviously it's pretty obvious that that guy is full of crap. He can't even see what you spot, so obviously he's not going to hit it. This gets a lot more intricate depending on the situation and who's doing what and who's where and what map it is. Light tanks are a very case-by-case basis kind of class. So this is all stuff you learn by intuition, based on playing it for long enough. Something a lot of these people don't do. We had a day on stream where we would start gifting a sub every single time someone on one of my teams called me a noob light or idiot light or just insulted what I was doing in general. We ended up giving out 7 subs in 30 battles, give or take. I don't remember the exact amount that we played that day, but usually it's 30. This is a very, very, very normal occurrence on my stream because I end up playing a lot of light tanks. And I can pretty confidently say that 19 out of 20 people who end up critiquing what I'm doing in a light tank don't play light tanks basically whatsoever. This, again, is where you ignore your team. This is the position and the time and the situation where you ignore your team. It comes down to intuition, like I said, but if this guy's saying, hey, go find that guy, or something along those lines, and you don't really feel good about it, chances are you're probably right. And there's nothing wrong with feeling bad about a potential spotting run in the case that it will probably end up killing you. It is better here to lose the battle and not the war, so to speak. And yeah, the guy's gonna flame you in chat, but guess what he's gonna do the next game? He's gonna drive to the same bush, he's gonna aim at the same spot, and he's gonna get mad at the light tank again. It's what they do. This, again, ignore your team. Kind of figure out through context clues who knows what they're talking about and who just wants to shoot something. And from there, you can filter it out in your own brain about like, okay, that guy could probably hit whatever I see and I can do it safely, or that guy has no idea what he's talking about and probably plays mostly tank destroyers. I've seen both. One's great, the other one's not so much. The other big thing to emphasize, which a lot of people that snipe don't understand, it is not the light tank's job to keep you unspotted. It is your job to stay hidden in a position that is able to shoot things, which a lot of tank destroyer mains especially don't understand. All they know is the enemy light tank is spotting them, and their light tank isn't spotting anybody. A large part of the time, that has more to do with the tank destroyers than anything the light tanks are doing. I've lost more than a few games and been blamed for more than a few losses purely because my tank destroyers sat in positions where they got scouted exceptionally easily and then got upset that, hey, only they were spotted and the enemy wasn't spotted. Most of the time, this ends up reflecting back on the light tank when, shocker, it's not your fault. Their enemy tank destroyers either just had better positions or had more bushes to hide behind, or were just further away. This often has nothing to do with the light tank players. It's just the fact that some tank destroyer players don't hide themselves good enough. And this doesn't apply to just light tanks either. I've had a lot of games where I've been flamed for running from a flank in a heavy tank, when it's kind of obvious if you just stay there, you're gonna die. So why not fall back into better support? I am going to do a French cosplay and just book it because we won the other flank and we're losing this one. So sorry, Renegade, but we're not winning that. Spotted here. It's probably SU or just someone in the bushes over here. The Leo PTA actually just said it's tied. Yeah, 1-to-1 flank apiece. Actually having to explain basic combat tactics to this guy. It's a decently good rule of thumb for a lot of general stuff once you're starting to kind of figure out how this stuff works. And gradually as you go, your engagement Rolodex, as I'm going to call it, is going to expand until you kind of have a general feel for how most situations go. When things work, when things don't, why things don't work when they can, and why things work when they probably shouldn't, is all stuff you learn over time. This is just another one of those things. But a good starting point is to ignore your team. A lot of them just want to shoot things. I get it. I mean, who doesn't want to shoot things? We're playing a tank game. But you gotta know when, where, why, how, and all of that stuff. Is it safe? Why would it not be safe? Why could it be safe? Is it worth the risk? How will the battle end up at this point if I end up dying? And at what point in the battle should you start shooting? Because that's another thing. I've been told on more than a couple occasions that I should just never shoot in my T49 with a 152mm derp gun by some crony at the back of the map with a 105mm gun. My gun caliber is 47mm bigger than his is, and I do double his damage in one shot. But light tank, not supposed to shoot, right? Wrong. Knowing when to shoot and where is going to save you in a lot of situations, and it's going to win you a lot of games. Again, intuition and ignoring your team. Now, that doesn't mean go all gung-ho doing as much damage as possible every single match. There is obviously a lot of merit in getting assistance damage and spotting for your team to end up winning. However, definitely don't just sit in a bush. And if someone's telling you to not shoot something and you can get that kill pretty safely, chances are it's worth getting the kill. It's a very case-by-case kind of thing, like I said before, and this all comes with experience. There's a lot of things to light tanks, like counter-spotting bushes and good early positions and all that stuff. But a very, very good place to start is ignore what your team is doing. There are obviously a lot of exceptions to the rule. Case in point, your whole team goes one way, you probably shouldn't go the other way. That applies to all classes. But if a team has kind of a normal sort of rollout, you can kind of ignore what a lot of them are doing. If you do your own thing, you stay alive and try and keep finding targets, people will shoot things. At some point. Hopefully. It's far from a guarantee. Sir.
This is optimistic. Look at him panic. Oh, yes, yes, hook, hook, hook. Okay, soap rocks, you're really screwing me here. Thank you, Artie.